We're in a federal election once again, and for the first time in 18 years, I'm not running in that federal election.
Well, Mark Carney caught lying again, actually twice in this episode. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. This chronic liar is lying about everything and anything, and these are huge issues. We've got him lying about China and his connection to China. He also has a dirty past dealing with Indigenous people, which I'll expose in this video. We got CBC trying to fact check Pierre Poilievre, so I'll fact check their fact check. Among some other stuff, let's jump into this. So starting this one off, we've got Jonathan Wilkinson back in the news here. This is coming from Blacklock's reporter. Says Canadians face 276 million per year higher costs after Jonathan Wilkinson mandates California emission standards on essential appliances like gas furnaces and ACs. It will be passed on to consumers. This is absurd. This madness must end. I think this post sums up the situation. Posted by Chris Brunette. Says, according to this chart, the entire nation of Canada just spent a whole 5 years fighting over a carbon tax that crippled the nation's economy to offset just 37 hours worth of China's carbon. Oh, geez. Next up, we got Mark Carney getting grilled on China and his connection to China, which he denies. But before we play that, let's just replay this clip here briefly. This really sets the stage.
Why do you think that China, the PRC, seems to like you? Why are they praising you?
I have absolutely no idea, and I have absolutely no idea, and
So notice I mentioned this before. When he goes to answer this, he steps away from the microphone. He always does that when it's a question he really doesn't like. He's got something to hide. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's hiding something, but that's what the body language is showing us.
I have absolutely no idea, and I think I'll leave it at that.
Why are you leaving it at that? You should be expanding on this, Mark. Well, look at this one.
Annalise, Globe and Mail. My colleagues have a story today about a Liberal candidate's relations with China-friendly groups and a meeting that you also held with a pro-Beijing group. So my question is, why did you meet with this pro-Beijing group, Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada? And is the party okay with the fact that Liberal candidate Peter Yan has been so close with the Chinese consulate and China-friendly groups, given the public inquiry into foreign interference, says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence?
Okay.
Before he answers that, let's just look at his body language here. Same thing. He's asked this question right here, and he takes a step sideways and away from the microphone. See that? He doesn't like this question. He doesn't want to answer this one. Every single time, you can read this guy like a book. You also get that little quirk on the side of his lip here. On this side, it's always this side too.
Has been so close with the Chinese consulate and China-friendly groups, given the public inquiry into foreign interference, says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group, okay? Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that, okay? Or your colleagues do. I'm a politician.
I'm sorry, what? You're a politician? Wasn't it just a few months ago you were in Davos? Yeah, this clip here where he's saying he's not a politician, he's a banker.
Going to a central banker for political advice is never a good idea.
Come on.
I go to events where there are hundreds and thousands over the course of a day of different people there. That is not a meeting. If somebody happens to be in the room, takes a picture with me, that's not a meeting, okay? First point. Secondly, with respect to Mr. Yun, this is a person who has served his community for decades. This is a person who's deputy commissioner of the police. Okay, a person in discharge of those responsibilities meets with a variety of community groups in the community because that's his job. That's his responsibility. We're proud to have him as a candidate, and I honor his service, including on today. Thank you.
He's talking about the guy who replaced Paul Chang, his other cop that's got direct ties to China. So we're about to fact check Mark Carney here, and this is not pretty.
But you check your sources before you write things like that, okay?
Okay, check the sources. I guess we all forgot to do that, didn't we?
Never heard of this group. Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check.
Full stop, full stop. Let's check our sources. Oh, like this source here with Mark Carney literally standing with the group. Here are photos of Mr. Carney with JCC leadership. This is not in some banquet hall. This literally individual photos. Here's another one. Mark Carney met with executives of Pro-Beijing, Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada. Mark Carney today denied this during a press conference. Why does he even do this? He's an outright liar. Look at this. This goes on and on. Here he is meeting with this group here, JCC. You can see the link up in the corner here. Look how bad this is. This is right from the jcc.com. This is their website. And look what they're doing. Financial giant takes charge of Maple Leaf Country and China-Canada strategic breakthrough ushers in hope. Canada's political arena ushered in major changes. Mark Carney was successfully elected leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, indicating in the near future he will shoulder the heavy responsibility of blah, 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 blah. Recently, Xiu Xianggang, president of Jinsu International Chamber of Commerce in Canada, and Jiangru Honore, president, and the other Chamber of Commerce representative had an in-depth meeting with the soon-to-be appointed Prime Minister. It's written on their website, Mark. You had a meeting with them, and it's written right here. Mark Carney believes that trade must be diversified, including economic dependence on the United States, actively expanding trade relations. This is Mark Carney's plan. He wants to open things up to China. I wonder why that is. This website is gross. If we scroll down, it's like a legendary journey from Arctic ice rink to pinnacle of international finance. This is just gushing over Mark Carney. Carney's growth process is a model of elite education in Canada. He was born in blah, 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 blah. Global financial leader in the crisis era, a pioneer in North America's economic independence, a game breaker in China-Canada cooperation. Listen to this stuff. This whole website is dedicated to gushing about Mark Carney, but he has nothing to do with them. He must have been in a room. There was 1,000 people. Someone took a picture. It was the back of his head. Like it was something like that, right? Right, Mark? Chronic liar. Moving over to Pierre Poilievre's press conference. So he's announcing $100,000 being saved on new homes. Look at this. A one-word answer. He gives CTV a question. He gave them an answer.
We'll go to the next question.
Good morning, Rachel Aiello, CTV News. We've met people at your rallies who don't believe the polls. Do you believe the polls, and can you commit today that you will respect the results of the election no matter the outcome?
Yes.
We'll go to the next question.
So this was a very Trumpian kind of question. They're trying to tie him to Trump because that's what happened with Trump. That's what Stacey here was mentioning. So badly want to put a Trump spin on this. That's what happened with Trump's election. The whole thing with not believing the polls. And this section here, will you honor the results of the election?
Results of the election no matter the outcome.
Yes.
That's what happens when you try to spin a narrative. He's giving you one word. There's nothing they can do with that now. Conversely, the Liberals should be asked the same question. The Conservatives win the election with a minority. How do you want to bet the Liberals are going to try to form a coalition government to thwart the will of the people? Next up, we got Mark Carney here, speaks on his strategy, seeking trade partners outside of the U.S. This is part of his plan. Can you guess which countries he's about to talk about?
The stakes have never been higher because it's not just about our trading relationship with the United States. It isn't an accident that I spoke to President von der Leyen today, because there was an interest in deepening our trading relationship with the European Union, with the United Kingdom, with like-minded partners in Asia. And the question is, one of the big questions in this election is who's going to protect Canadians, but also who's going to represent Canada at those negotiations. Who's going to get the best deals for Canada?
It's not you. You just got squashed by Donald Trump. We're one of two countries who didn't get a decrease in tariffs. The other being China. Check out this. David Jacobs posting this one. So Mark Carney was caught lying again.
Mr. Carney, there's a genocide happening in
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. I'm aware, which is why we have an arms embargo.
1 hour later.
I didn't hear that. Actually, I didn't hear that word. Is that you were there, I guess. And yeah, so it's noisy. There's you get if you're up there, you hear snippets of what people say. And I heard Gaza and that, and my point was I'm aware of the situation in Gaza.
The guy's a chronic liar. We can all see he's lying. He heard the word genocide. He agreed with it because he wants to get that vote. What we don't need in our country is Mark Carney here. He's asked about oil and gas and whether he'd be definitive on whether he'd be supporting Alberta. Listen to this nonsense.
in front of all these people from Alberta. You talk about fast tracking, nation building projects.
Yep.
Can you give a commitment to us that you will do everything in your power to get new oil and gas pipelines and new LNG projects included? A real commitment.
Okay,
here.
so first off, Rick, thank you for your question. It is great to be back in Alberta. Hey, I'm from Alberta. You don't need to tell me what Alberta is like. I'm from Alberta. I know this province. Tons of friends here. I got family here. I've known here. I grew it up here. I know. I'll be direct. I'm focused on results. I'm focused on specific projects. I'm focused, and I'm putting in place, as Prime Minister, put in place a process that was very clear. We're going to identify projects of national interest. Any major energy project, virtually any major energy project that comes from this great province, is going to pass the boundaries of other provinces, is going to be built on Aboriginal lands. They will need the consent and the support of other provinces, of les peuples autochtones, Aboriginal people. The federal government has a role to play here in several respects that I have put in place. I've been Prime Minister for 3.5 weeks, and this is what, because I'm from Alberta, I'm direct and I do things, okay, Rick? And what have I put in place? I put in place not just a commitment, I got an agreement with Premier Smith and every other provincial and territorial premier in my first week to build energy corridors that run to the national interest.
This guy's already come out and said that oil needs to stay in the ground. He goes on a weird tangent there talking about First Nations, Aboriginal people having to have input. We'll go back to that clip in a minute, but first let's just take a look at how Mark Carney's record looks with Aboriginal people. Carney's former firm Brookfield has been accused of breaching Indigenous rights in 4 countries. During that period from 2020 to 2024, that's when Mark Carney was chair of Brookfield, Brookfield businesses faced reports of serious human rights abuses in Brazil, Indigenous resistance in Colombia, a First Nations $100 million lawsuit in Ontario, an environmental dispute in Maine. In Ontario, Maine, and Colombia, Brookfield-owned hydroelectric dam and one wind farm allegedly threatened Indigenous rights or damaged the environment. In Brazil, international NGO Global Witness accused Brookfield and subsidiaries of deforestation and human rights violations, including the attempted eviction of an Indigenous group and breach of anti-SLAVE labor law in 2021. Does this sound like a guy who gives a crap about Indigenous people? He doesn't give a crap about anyone. The multinational conglomerate denied any wrongdoing. Kempton, this lawyer here, represents Mississauga First Nation, went on to sue Brookfield Renewable that was filed in 2022 over the 4 dams in Mississauga River and Lake Huron's North Shore. The chief said dams in question devastated community by destroying fishing sites, flooding territory, and displacing people. In Maine to Colombia, it says in Maine, conservation groups sued Brookfield Renewable in 2021. The groups alleged 4 dams on the Kennebec River were violating American federal law by repeatedly killing Atlantic salmon from an endangered population. Goes on to talk about the Sagamoso Dam owned by Brookfield. We'll get into that in a second here. Carney's campaign declined to address the reports directly. Mr. Carney left his career in business and finance to run for office and is focused exclusively on serving the people of Canada. He's got a dirty record. So we're going to take a look at this dam here in Colombia. So this dam was built by another company. Brookfield came in and bought it up, and it's been causing all sorts of havoc. Colombia's 4th largest dam, despite local opposition more than a decade ago, continues to affect livelihoods of neighboring communities in Colombia's Department of Santander, an area also targeted by fracking. An ecosystem restoration project designed to compensate for the dam's environmental impact by buying and restoring degraded land with a protected area has pushed locals from their land and left them with unclear tenure rights. Women-led associations are demanding the companies involved to respect the rights of locals and clarify their status. So it goes on to say here, they built this dam. Brookfield came in here and bought 57% of the shares of this company here, Isagen. The dam opened in 2014. Brookfield bought it in 2016. So Mark Carney was still managing this asset for his entire tenure there. And he didn't seem to care about solving the Indigenous people's problem here. 1,700 acres of land, cropland, causing deforestation, loss of habitat, aquatic species diversity. 1,000 people had to relocate livelihoods, relying on the river, fishing, small-scale mining. Subsistence agriculture suffered. More than 16,000 people were affected, while community members opposed the dam faced threats, disappearances, and even were ended by someone. So it goes on to say that they're legally required to make amends for their ecological impacts. Brookfield just denies all of this. So this article here, it goes on to show the percentage, 57.6% is what Brookfield bought in this company. These people's lives were drastically affected by this. Mark Carney has the audacity to say he cares about Indigenous people.
Fast track those. To make that tangible, what I have done in the subsequent 2.5 weeks is put in place one project, one review at a federal level, what I'm announcing today makes it more tangible with a single window, pulls together a host of different approval processes, signals clearly.
Look at this woman's face. She's like, what the heck are you saying? Just look at this.
Approval processes, signals clearly to the province of Alberta, as well as every other province with the exception of BC, which has already signed up to this, that we will sign cooperation agreements with them. And that will allow us to rely on the assessments of those provinces, which is another way of fast tracking it. So I'm focused on getting things done in conventional as well as clean. I've got an agreement. I've got a process at the federal level. I'm putting it in place. Now, to be clear, Rick, we need your vote. I shouldn't ask that at the meeting. I'm sorry. We need the vote of your readers. Let me clarify that. Strike that. Strike that. We need the vote of your readers. We need to get some of the Liberal candidates.
This is a jambalaya of words. What is it even saying?
All the Liberal candidates elected, as many as possible, so we can put this into place.
We don't want this put into place, Mark. I think we've had enough. Next up, we have the CBC doing what they do best, spend $1 million a day to slander Pierre Poilievre, and that's what we've got here. They're fact-checking him. Well, let's fact-check this fact-checker.
We've been taking you live to Milton, Ontario, where Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre has been speaking with workers in that part of the Greater Toronto Area, but also answering 4 questions from reporters, both in person and on the phone. Let's turn to CBC's Rafi Boudjikanian, who joins us now live from Ottawa. So, Rafi, tell us about what we heard from the Conservative leader.
Natasha, I'll get there, but I just want to point out that, once again, the Conservative leader did not take questions from CBC at this media availability. We're about halfway through the campaign, and the Conservatives have not taken questions from CBC.
Yeah, because you guys are paid off corrupt media. That is why. Get some integrity, get a backbone, and start reporting the news honestly for once.
Since the first week, they did take one from Radio-Canada yesterday, and you may have heard some shout.
This guy fact-checked himself. I didn't have to do it. They took a question from Radio-Canada yesterday, which is CBC.
There at the end of the news conference, that's because reporters tried to get more questions in to the leader. The Conservatives stuck to the 4 they've been taking at every media availability.
Why would they waste a question on media that doesn't want to report media honestly? He takes questions from local reporters who have real problems in their real cities. It's despicable that you guys don't care about Canadians. We're trying to solve some real problems here, and you guys are hurting us. You're hurting our country.
Less than the other leaders have been taking so far. Now,
no, that's not true. Mark Carney denies journalists all the time. He has lists of people who are not allowed to come in, journalists that are not allowed to come into his events, and he only lets in crumb snatchers like you guys to ask woke, paid-off questions that fit your narrative.
As for what we heard from Mr. Poilievre there, I do want to just quickly fact-check a couple of things. He opened his remarks by saying that the Canadian, Canada is still being hit with tariffs, even though Donald Trump has paused them elsewhere. Donald Trump has not paused tariffs. He's paused tariff hikes. Most countries are still being hit with that 10% base tariff. Canada is not among those countries, and there were...
The way you frame that, though, is not true. Canada is still getting hit by the street fennel tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs, other tariffs that are much higher than we see the sweeping action that Donald Trump has taken. Here's what it was before. This is only one page. There's multiple pages. You see, China was 34%. Then China came back and said they're going to tariff America. They went up to 84%. Donald Trump increased this tariff to 125%. That's how that reciprocal thing works. Because Donald Trump holds all the power with America, the strongest nation on earth. We look at all these other ones. Vietnam, for example, 46%. Now they're down to 10% because they didn't retaliate. Where Canada, we're getting no discount because Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau put retaliatory tariffs on America, and we're pissing off America. Same thing. I mean, look at all these countries. So some of these countries already were at 10%, Brazil, Singapore, etc. But a lot of these are getting a huge drop, like Bangladesh, 37%, down to 10%. We've got crumb snatchers like this guy in CBC who will say anything for a paycheck.
No new tariffs added on to Canada yesterday. Mr. Poilievre also suggested that Mark Carney plagiarized his way through university. There was a National Post article earlier
which showed a blatant example that he plagiarized during university.
In this campaign cycle that detailed how there may have been 10 instances in Mark Carney's PhD thesis that appeared not to cite a work that he is citing elsewhere in that document. And then finally, Mr. Poilievre mentioned this statistic of...
How was that even a fact check? He just mumbled a bunch of words. He didn't disprove that Carney plagiarized during university.
Of 6,000 criminals that have been, 40 criminals that have been arrested 6,000 times by Vancouver police. That is from a Toronto Star article where the Vancouver police have mentioned that there have been 6,000 negative interactions, which is not quite the same as an arrest. It could...
Oh, that's right. So 6,000 negative interactions that cost taxpayers money because the police have to be dealing with these same 40 guys. That's right. He's been fact-checked now. Thank goodness for the Liberals' catch and release policies, where the open door Liberal policy has allowed criminals to come in and get away with heinous acts in Canada, which is currently destroying our society. But don't worry, we got Gumshoe here on the case.
Include things like an encounter with the police or getting written up, and not all of that is violent crime. Some of it is property crime, according to the police themselves.
Oh, property crime. Okay, so that totally just dismisses these criminals' actions. The CBC gets increasingly more awful by the day. Next up, we got Captain Schmuck doing his best to hurt the Liberals. I mean, this is not good campaigning. He sounds like a bumbling buffoon.
As you know, we're in a federal election once again, and for the first time in 18 years, I'm not running in that federal election.
It's always about Justin Trudeau, isn't it? Captain Schmuck, King Narcissist, is back on the street.
A long time serving and leading in for the community here. But I am very, very happy to introduce to you someone who will be a worthy successor to me as Member of Parliament for Papineau, someone who I've known for over a
worthy successor.
dozen years, who's worked beside me and alongside me in serving the people all across the country. So I certainly hope you will continue in this important moment to support the Liberal Party, to stand up for Canada against the challenges we're facing around the world.
Oh, this guy is too much.
But also to make sure you have a strong...
I knew he wouldn't be able to stay on the sidelines. He's a fruit bat. I can't stand seeing him after the 8 years of non-stop Trudeau fluff. Well, what did we learn from this video? Mark Carney's a liar. I think we already knew that. He's got a pretty bad record with Indigenous people, environmental record. I've shown the environmental violations tracker for Brookfield multiple times. Mark Carney doesn't care about people. All he cares about is money and power.